Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Max Starrett, your friendly neighborhood Simpsons kin, and joining me is fellow Honey Badger, Hannah Wallen. And we got some breaking news for you guys to talk about that actually just came out about a few minutes ago. So we're all very familiar with a young man named Milo Yiannopoulos, who has recently come under fire for some controversy a couple months ago. But he has been alluding to this particular event that he's been calling Cinco de Milo for the past month or so. That actually happened today and happened just a few minutes ago, actually. He was doing a live stream on his YouTube channel. And the whole purpose of it, apparently, was to announce some important things regarding his brand and what he was planning on doing going further with his career as, you know, a conservative commentator, a provocateur. You all know what he is. He's a fabulous man. And at this stream, apparently what was happening was he was holding a house party in an abandoned house in Miami. And, you know, it's decorated with all the different things that you would associate with Milo. You know, there was one wall that had a bunch of posters that said "Deport your local illegal," and then there was a beer pong room where one wall had the words "feminism is," and then the opposite wall had the word "cancer." Typical Milo fare, right? But that's not the important stuff. You guys want us to talk about what was announced at this particular event, and there were 4 key things that I and Hannah wanted to discuss with you today. So, first off, obviously, one of the key things that happened to him this past year, following the controversy regarding his comments regarding pedophilia, what happened was the publisher that was going to publish his book titled Dangerous, they decided against doing that because they figured it would hurt their brand. Well, apparently, following Milo's controversy, he made a few calls, as he says, and raised $12 million. And apparently what he's going to be doing is suing Simon and Schuster for $10 million. Now, supposedly, along with this, he says he wants to make F Simon and Schuster t-shirts. And generally, he wants to send a message that they can never do this again to somebody with the wrong opinions. Second part. Apparently, because of this controversy and because Simon & Schuster wouldn't publish his book, he went ahead and decided to create his own publication. Now, I might get a few of these details wrong because during the live stream, some things were kind of hard to hear. I couldn't even get the title of his publication right the first time because people were cheering and whooping and hollering. But apparently, he's calling his new publication Dangerous Books. And supposedly it's going to be online and it's meant to give a voice to all the dangerous conservatives out there. It's going live in 7 days, and apparently Milo's new book, Dangerous, is going to be the first available. Now, the third point is that he is definitely going on a new tour, and it's going to have a new name. It's not going to be the Dangerous Faggot Tour anymore, but in fact it's going to be called Troll Academy. Not much else is known about it at this time. Apparently he's going to be revisiting the most accommodating venues within the United States, although he's accepting applications from a bunch of other universities he hasn't visited in his past tour, and students will enter for free. And the fourth point regarding his supposed free speech week that is going to be happening in UC Berkeley later on this year in the fall, he said that if the college doesn't accommodate them, like they didn't accommodate what's her name, Ann Coulter, a while back, or when Milo first came around in February and, you know, Antifa was throwing fireworks and stuff at the building that he was supposed to be giving his talk in. He said that if the college doesn't accommodate him and his entourage and, you know, the people that wanted to come see him this time, he's going to be occupying UC Berkeley and the area surrounding for a full month. Milo calls it this movement's Woodstock, and the whole purpose of it is to make sure that UC Berkeley becomes the United States Center for Free Speech once again. So those are the 4 main things. Hannah, from what I understand, you did not watch the live stream, but based on all this information that I just presented to you, what is your reaction to this? And do you think, you know, is this an appropriate, strong response to all the stuff that he's been going through this past year?
Well, I think it's a classic Milo response. The in-your-face nature of it. I mean, Occupy Berkeley, that's kind of hilarious because the Occupy movement kind of came out of the left, and he's talking about occupying an institution that has become increasingly further and further left. But the best part is the simultaneous suing of Simon and Schuster's publishing company while making fuck Simon and Schuster t-shirts. That's gonna be perfect. Now, I don't know how the lawsuit, how to predict the lawsuit is going to go, because I don't know the details of his contract with Simon and Schuster. It depends, honestly, on whether or not his contract had a section in it that basically, like, when you get a job with an employer, you're supposed to hold the employer blameless for anything, and you're supposed to not shame your employer by saying or doing controversial things. And there are contracts that some employers have employees sign when they start working for that particular employer that says, basically, if you embarrass us, we have the right to fire you, and it's not wrongful termination. And so it kind of depends on whether his contract had something like that. But I think it's kind of inappropriate for a book company to do something like that, considering they rely on freedom of speech for their continued ability to operate. And I mean, one of the biggest symbols of attacks on free speech throughout history has been totalitarian regimes burning books and extremist branches or segments of various schools of thought burning books that particular school of thought was in opposition to, or that they felt went against their school of thought. Whether it's a religious school of thought, whether it's a political school of thought, whatever. This is something that's happened numerous times, and people who have done it have always been demonized. And here we have, Milo's situation, where his choice to publish with this publisher was interfered with by the equivalent of book burning. Is like they tried to burn his book before it was ever published because people were angry with what he said. So on one hand, the question of whether he has a legal leg to stand on is a valid question. On the other hand, the question of whether he has a moral leg or a philosophical leg to stand on with that, he absolutely does.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure whether or not this whole suing business is actually going to fall in his favor, but even if it doesn't, it's money that he raised, and it's not really going to be to his detriment too much, even if the lawsuit fails. And even if it does, he still has a bunch of these other endeavors that are very likely going to have people investing in his brand, like
Definitely.
The publication. The publication sounds like a good idea, but aside from him and Ann Coulter, I suppose, what other dangerous conservative voices can you think of that might want to invest and their time and their efforts in with that particular publication?
Well, if it's going to be is it a publication or is it a publishing company? What's he doing specifically? Is it just going to be like a online, like everything's online, or? I would have to assume so. The problem is, like I said, it was hard to tell what he was saying, because the first time that he announced the title of the publication, I only heard the first word, which was dangerous, and then the second word I thought was, he said dangerous fucks. Which you and I discussed beforehand. Yeah. No, that probably wouldn't work so well in terms of advertising if that was what he wanted to title it. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting idea. We'll have to see how many people come out of the woodworks to actually want to contribute their voices to that particular thing. Yeah, because there actually are quite a few people that do write on political topics from either a conservative standpoint, a libertarian standpoint. I think I've been referred to as libertarian and constitutional conservative by different people. He might get anarcho-capitalists. He might get anarcho-communists. It just all depends on how open they are to working with Milo, and how open Milo is to working with different ideas, as long as they have something in common with sort of his goals, basically, what his outlook is. And I would say this might be an opportunity for people who are not at the national level, but at the, maybe celebs, maybe not even that high, to find an outlet as well. Maybe he will open it up to unknowns. Who knows?
Yeah, and then finally, this one is sort of the most interesting thing because it is the most one of the more pertinent topics that we've seen in political discourse recently, which is the whole free speech rally controversies regarding Berkeley and the Antifa riots and stuff like that. I'm just wondering, because he is sort of like the number one guy that his opposition would like to see gone from the political discourse. If he goes, when he goes to Berkeley, I'm really, really curious as to whether or not Antifa will come back, and they'll come back with a vengeance, unlike, a few days ago where Gavin McInnes and Lauren Southern showed up in place of Ann Coulter, who couldn't make it, and Antifa wasn't there. Like, do you think that there will be sort of resurgence of this violence, and maybe that's one of the reasons, or one of the main reasons why Milo wants to go back there?
Well, there's kind of a bit of a question as to how long Antifa is going to continue what they're doing now that they have started to get pushback. Because, there's going to be two groups within Antifa that aren't going to react the same way. There's a lot of, young, spoiled, pampered kids, for lack of a better term. They might not necessarily be rich, but they're definitely not accustomed to adversity, and they're not accustomed to basically having people push back against anything they do. They're used to being able to say they're triggered and go to their safe space. And those guys aren't going to hold up to any kind of pushback. They're going to act like your regular routine bully always acts. And the minute that they get that pushback, they're going to play victim, and they're gonna fade into the woodwork. But it seems like, and this has been, other people have spotted this, there are professionals involved with Antifa. And those guys are a little more unpredictable. And it really depends on whether their goal is making a statement or triggering violence, what we're going to see. If their goal is causing trouble, triggering violence, making the conditions surrounding free speech so difficult for the hosts, basically, that they will do the job of shutting it down for Antifa, then there will be violence, because that's what they'll use to do it. If their goal is just making a statement, then they'll show up and they'll protest, and that's it. And then if their goal is there's been some speculation that some of these guys appear to be trying to tempt their opposition into engaging in violence to get them arrested and to make them look like the bad guys, the same way that was done at Trump rallies. And so that's something else to watch out for. And my advice to anybody that was going to be there would be to try to avoid conflict and avoid direct confrontation with anybody, and only limit violence to absolute need for self-defense. If you're in actual danger, then you do what you got to do. But if you're not, then if there's a separation between you and them, maintain it. And if you do have to defend yourself, though, take their mask off, because that shows who the attacker was. It makes it easier to make an arrest if somebody's violent towards you. That makes it easier to make an arrest of the individual, and that's the kind of thing that's going to happen with this Antifa violence, is that it's going to have to become a thing that they are held accountable for what they do. And in general, the only way that we can do that is if we know who they are. So that's my thoughts on the whole Antifa thing. There's not really a solid way to predict what's going to happen, only how to respond under specific circumstances.
Before we finish with closing comments, I just want to say, whatever you think about Milo, what his political positions, whether you think they're absolutely reprehensible or you actually think that they are something that Western societies need to embrace, it's sort of just interesting, and it's sort of fun to see a man of that flamboyance, and I'm not just speaking to his sexuality, but just in terms of the way that he presents himself and puts on a show, it's the laughter that we need in these pressing times is something that we can get from Milo, and that's sort of the thing that we need to embrace. And then we'll just worry about his particular political opinions after that. Because, you know, even people that like Milo, they'll admit sometimes that he is a bit of a walking contradiction, but that's not really the point. The whole point is free speech, making sure that it's protected, and he's one of the best weapons that we have to try and ensure that that virtue is upheld. So that's about it. Hannah, did you have any other closing thoughts before we finish this little broadcast?
No, I think that sums it up pretty well.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much for joining me, Hannah. This was some breaking news. We'll obviously keep you guys updated if any more information comes to us regarding Milo's tour, his new book, or any of his other endeavors that are coming in the future. Thanks so much for joining us, guys, and keep your ear tuned to Honey Badger Radio for more information. Bye-bye.